President Trump was victorious in his showdown with Colombia over the weekend after he threatened the country with tariffs and visa restrictions if they did not accept flights of deported migrants. Tariffs have been the topic of conversation under the new administration, with Trump saying his proposed tariffs on China, Canada, and Mexico could come as soon as February 1st. Here to discuss is Christine McDaniel, Mercatus Center Senior Research Fellow. And Christine, I want to start with what happened between the U.S. and Colombia. It seemed like the threat of tariffs worked for President Trump in this case. Given that, do you view tariffs as more of a negotiating tactic, or do you believe the president when he says he's going to be aggressive when it comes to certain nations?
Well, I'm an economist, so, just like Brad was saying, yes, a tariff is an import tax. It raises prices. But President Trump has been able to use tariffs as a very effective negotiating tool so far, in the less than a week he's been in office. But it's been quite remarkable. And look, President Trump campaigned on certain things, border control, border security, fentanyl crisis, and getting other countries to increase their defense spending. He seems to be very serious about that, and he sees tariffs as a tool to use to achieve those goals. So, we saw that even before he got in office, he was tweeting about, to Mexico and Canada about the tariffs. And then before you know it, Canada's Trudeau comes down, has dinner with him and his border czar at Mar-a-Lago, and goes home with an announcement they're spending more on border security and defense. And Mexico's Sheinbaum announces that they will be putting a lot more resources into processing illegal migrants at the border before they go to the U.S. So he's, it's pretty remarkable. And so far, it has worked there, and it has, just as we've seen over the weekend, now worked for Colombia.
Is it going to work, though, with China? I think that's a big question.
That's a big question. China's, not Colombia. But did you see Trump's talk at Davos? Watch the whole thing. It's really interesting. When he was asked about China, the first thing he said was, he called me. And he sees his relationship with Xi as very important, and also, I think, very positive. So the fact that Xi and President Trump are already talking very closely, Vice President Vance met with his counterpart also recently. It seems like they perhaps have some understanding about what each other's priorities are and where the red lines are. I'm cautiously optimistic.
How are you viewing the cost benefit when it comes to tariffs on certain countries? In other words, is there more of a downside risk when you slap a tariff on Mexico, China, one of the U.S.'s largest trading partners, versus putting tariffs on China?
No, yeah, absolutely. If these tariffs come into effect, then yes, there will be economic effects. The U.S. Importers, U.S. businesses will absorb some of it. They'll pass some of it on to U.S. consumers. And then also foreign exporters, they may also absorb some of it. What we're hearing from some retailers, especially in footwear and apparel, textile industries, is they were able to absorb a lot of the tariffs in the first round. They won't be able to absorb much more moving forward, which would suggest that U.S. consumers would bear more of the burden. So, I don't think it's going to sink the U.S. economy, but it definitely is going to make Trump's goal of fighting inflation that much harder.
Christine, what do you see the impact on the global economy? And I bring that up in the context of, if you just take a look at tariffs on Canada specifically, Torsten Slok sent out a great chart, I thought, this morning. He was actually pulling it from the Bank of Canada, and they ran this simulation of the impact here on Canada if the U.S. were to impose 25 tariffs. And very much you can see that downside risk outweighing any sort of upside risk. But it's true not only for Canada, but also when you take a look at the world's impact. So how should investors or economists here, how are you thinking about that real world impact?
No, for sure. We ran the simulations as well, and there's a huge global downside risk, and the U.S. Will bear the majority of the burden of that. But I think, look, if the tariffs do come to fruition, that's one thing. And then it's another thing if countries retaliate. Retaliation increases the cost immensely for the world. And it's hard for countries not to retaliate. No, I mean, this could definitely shave a little bit off of global GDP growth, especially for the larger countries. It really just depends on, to what extent other countries are willing to cooperate with Trump and his team on their key goals. But if the tariffs come to fruition, and if other countries retaliate, then consumer prices will go up. Global growth will take a bit of a haircut, and we'll be looking at not as happy days as we would have been. So we're really hopeful or hoping that other countries will cooperate with Trump and his team on these key goals that he campaigned on.
And to that point, you just said consumer prices going up. A big question has been who pays for tariffs. Trump says he believes that tariffs are paid by other countries. You say the data that doesn't really show up. So who pays here?
Yeah, well, I mean, if of course, the United States pays. They pay. How much they pay depends on the market situation, right? So the tariff is usually shared between the foreign country and the U.S., right? And then who in the U.S. pays? Is it the U.S. businesses, the importers? Where along the supply chain? Is it you at the checkout aisle? It's a little bit of all of those entities, of all of those market participants. We saw that in the 2018 tariffs. All studies have shown that U.S. consumers paid for at least some of the tariffs. That's just not even, that's just obvious to everybody who looks at the data. But it didn't sink the economy. So, So I don't know. I don't take everything he says literally, but I do take, his goals, he takes them very seriously, and so should everybody. And again, that's why I'm really hoping that other countries will cooperate with his team on these key goals so we can avoid a very costly global trade war.
Christine, real quick, just we only have about 15 seconds here, but how likely is it that we actually are going to see these tariffs implemented on Saturday?
Well, for Mexico and Canada, it sounds like there's some people in the administration that want to go ahead and do it, even if the goal is to take them off if they can get a deal. So I'd say maybe 50-50, depends on what parts of the Trump team wins out in these key talks behind the scenes.
So it can go either way. All right, Christine, great stuff. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.